He also weighed in on COVID-19 deaths. Here's what Donald Trump had to say about America's record in that area.
If we wouldn't have closed it, we would have been talking 2.5 or 3 million. We're at 180. It's far too much. But we would have been talking about, it would have been unacceptable, unsustainable. It would have been so bad. Think of it. We're at 180,000. Other countries are doing terribly. Did you see the statistics of us compared to other countries, us compared to Europe, us compared? We have done an incredible job. We get absolutely no credit for the job we've done. And I don't want it myself, but I want it for the admirals and the generals and Mike Pence.
I guess, Europe's not a country, to say one thing. You can look at the death rate, and obviously the USA, if you go pure numbers, raw numbers compared to some countries, well, it doesn't look as bad. But to argue that overall the country has a good record on deaths and they're still piling up seems a stretch. Is it almost more fertile ground for Donald Trump to talk about, let's open the economy back, these people want to shut your economy down, rather trying to argue the toss on deaths?
No, I think that's right. I mean, we saw that Time magazine cover over the weekend highlighting the 200,000 deaths here, and this is not strong ground for the president. I don't think there's a lot of support for the fact that he's led a competent response on this or an effective technocratic response on this. And the interview with Bob Woodward last week just creates more dilemmas for him on that. I think you're right. When he can pivot to more ideological conversations, where he can pivot to principles, talking about, let the economy get back to business, let jobs go, stop hampering people's livelihoods. That's much stronger ground for him than trying to convince people that he's done a good job. But the president has to make, that's the personal need driving him. I'm sure his advisors are saying, leave it alone, don't cross swords with Dr Fauci anymore, just get on with it and start talking about what the Democrats are doing wrong.
He's also about 17,000 deaths shy of where the updated tally is. He spoke yesterday about a simmering issue, and one that's probably troubling a lot of people around the world, that whatever happens, the election, either side might essentially, and the real hardcore supporters of them, revolt. He's talking about rigging the election. This was him yesterday.
He's in charge of the election and the millions of ballots. So if I'm up like millions of votes, he can rig the election. He can rig the election. And I'll tell you what, whether it's in North Carolina, whether it's in Michigan, whether it's in other states where they're going to be sending out 80 million ballots. And it's Democrats. They're trying to rig this election.
So trying to tie in the broad issue there of mail-out ballots with rigging the election. His point he's trying to make is around the Nevada governor he was talking about there is you can end up in the courts over, remember the hanging Chad and that debate, what sort of vote should be counted when it comes down to these states, because as soon as they're carried, the whole, every single one of these college seats goes to one candidate. So that's why it can be so important. But this goes, the more we hear this, the more chance that the election result is not actually accepted. And that could happen, I guess, on both sides, James?
Look, it could happen, and you've got to remember what made the difference back in 2004 is that eventually one of the sides was willing to say, look, we've got to move on. We could argue about this for the next 10 years and never get a result. At some point, someone's got to concede and we've got to move the country forward. Now, you'd think the chances of that happening this time around, if there's a close and contested result, are poorer. But, the president, he was elected as an activist attacking the institutions of the state, and he's still doing that 4 years later. Talking about the fact that they're biased against not only him but the people he represents. And, he's given some healthy little tips to his supporters on how they might like to vote twice to make sure they really get the message and they really get counted. And there's obviously been some predictable backlash on that.
We're going to touch on Joe Biden. We might do that next time. But I think it's a really good point around, last time it was essentially, well, let's move on for the good of the country. It's impossible to see either side doing that, given how far apart they are these days. James Brown, we'll talk again soon. Thank you.